Iain Thomson from The Register is here to talk about Microsoft, SpaceX, and the Tesla announcement that never came. We'll also talk to Selena, Larson about how people are using their iPhones to manage mental health and make street art with Google Sheets. What? All that coming up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1559, recorded Wednesday, July 20th, 2016. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Trunk Club. Get clothes that fit and look amazing without ever stepping into a store again. Trunk Club will help you create the wardrobe you've always dreamed of with your own personal stylist. Go to trunkclub.com/TNT and join Trunk Club today. And by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to more than 100 job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And by Igloo Software. Igloo is an intranet you'll actually like. It connects people with the information they need to do their best work. Try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit or sign up for a live demo to see it in action. Hello and welcome to Tech News Today, the show where we talk about all the tech news that happened today. I am Megan Morrone. Jason Howell is out this week, but joining me today is Iain Thomson from The Register. Welcome, Iain.
Hi, Megan. How's it going?
It's going well. So in case you are new to the show, Iain's specialties are security, privacy, and rants full of British colloquialisms.
Oh, honestly, you make me sound like a complete nutter. That's not the case at all. I'm very... Well, actually, I'm occasionally polite.
Always, occasionally, sometimes. You're always polite to me. But it's the big, giant corporations that invade our privacy and security that you don't show your politeness to.
Oh yes, I'm the little startups who come up with socially divisive ideas, which would cause havoc if they were ever implemented. But I'm an equal opportunities offender.
Exactly. Well, I wanted to start off with Elon Musk's announcement. He said he was going to reveal his grandmaster plan. I thought it was 4 p.m., but now you reminded me that it was actually 5 p.m. Pacific, and that's still 20 minutes away. So have you heard anything?
I haven't as yet, no. I've been sort of pulling in favors left, right, and center, but nobody seems to know anything. Elon's been teasing about this for the last week because in 2006 he came up with his sort of the road ahead memo where he laid out his strategy for the next 10 years. So that was back then we just had the Tesla Roadster, and he laid out the idea for an economy cars that became the Model 3 or the Model X SUV. That was all put down in the plan, and now he's got the next 10 years to look forward to. And it's an interesting time because Tesla Motors URL is now becoming Tesla, and we've got the Solar City takeover. So I think we're going to be seeing some mention of a much more integrated company between sort of Solar City, the Powerwall functions, and the electric cars, and sort of laying out how he's going to get sort of a complete vertical integration, and hopefully some news as to where we are on the battery factories, because he's got the Gigafactory in Nevada, and they're also going to be building a factory in China to produce these batteries as well. So we're hoping for an update. I suspect it's going to be long on hyperbole and short on actual firm dates. But that's very much the run of course for Tesla, and they still keep on producing these marvelous vehicles.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Powerwall, which is their home generator, solar-powered generator, which we heard a lot about, and then we sort of heard when we talked about it last. I think it was like it's really for really rich people, not for the average person. Have you heard about anything about the Powerwall in practice?
I've spoken to a couple of people who've seen it. Certainly looking at the specs, it looks like it's a very handy bit of kit, particularly if you live in California or another area of the world prone to natural disasters. I mean, if the power goes out, then that's going to be very serious for any tech user. And having a home charged power wall would be quite handy in those circumstances. But it's also about just reducing the demand on the electrical grid. So if you've got, say, solar panels, I should imagine you'll be getting discounts on Powerwall, maybe even on the cars. I know the Model X isn't selling particularly well, so they might be willing to discount on that one. So, yeah, I mean, it makes a certain amount of sense, that integration. I do like the idea of a Powerwall. I like the idea of everyone becoming more self-sufficient, so we need less huge inefficient power stations when we can produce much more of our power ourselves, and also keep our costs down, which is always pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we just have to wait until after the show. Maybe it'll happen during the show. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But we do have some other news today. Facebook announced that over 1 billion people use their chat app Messenger every month. That makes it the most popular app on iOS ever, except, of course, for the Facebook app itself, which lays claim to 1.5 billion monthly users. According to TechCrunch, we send 17 billion photos, 1 billion messages, 380 million stickers, 22 million GIFs, and 10% of all VoIP calls using Facebook Messenger. Facebook also owns WhatsApp, another member of the 3 Comma Club when it comes to monthly users. Now, just in the last 20 months, Messenger has doubled its user count, and you, Iain, have some strong opinions on how they've gone about doing that. Discuss.
Well, what they've done is develop Nagware to a way that makes the Windows 10 updates look like positively polite invitations. Now, I don't actually have the Facebook app on my phone because I don't have a pressing need to discover whenever someone's posted up a new kitten picture. And I certainly don't have Messenger on my phone because ever since they split the Messenger app off from the Facebook app, they've been getting increasingly pushy about making sure people use it. Now, for people like myself that just use the mobile web page, if it used to be the case about a year ago, they started, if you got a message and you pressed on the screen to open the message, you get a little screen saying, would you like to install Messenger? It can do this and this and this, and not mentioning the terms and conditions were pretty grim and it owned pretty much all of your data, not to mention the battery life issues. And then about 6 months ago, if you had a message and pressed on the screen, then you get this reminder screen. You click on it to get rid of it. And then you click on the message again, and then you get another reminder screen just in case you've suffered a team mal episode or something and forgotten about the fact that this Messenger product was out there. And then they finally lowered the bar a couple of months ago and said you cannot read messages from your mobile web client unless you've got Messenger installed. So all this, it's so popular, it's so great. I suspect a large proportion of this billion people who are using it not because they particularly want to, but because they have to. And it's just become so irritating not having it and not being able to use the web client. They just think, oh, what the hell, we'll just download it. It'll make Zuckerberg happy, and at last I can use this for messaging. I know a few people who love it, but I suspect certainly in the last few months, this big increase in the number of people using it hasn't been down to choice, but more just to, got to get my messages somehow. I can't wait until I get back to a computer. May as well download the app. It's not really a great sales strategy in my mind.
No, it's not. I mean, I use it weirdly, mostly because that's the way I can communicate with Leo. Like, for some reason, all the other channels that he has are clogged up in some way. But that's the one that he answers me most to. So that's the only reason I use it. I mean, I have a handful of friends that use it, but a lot of friends who just don't. And I don't love it. I mean, I was trying to think when you were talking, like, is there a messaging client I love? And I think the closest is just messages on my iPhone. And I don't know why that I wouldn't, there's nothing in particular about it. It just works. So
yeah, no, I mean, I can sympathize in that, at least you've got messages on iOS is actually a pretty good platform. The messaging system on Android is a bloody mess at the moment. And it just sort of, they're constantly changing it. It's a pain in the backside. I mean, I quite like Twitter because it's, the messages get through. It's people generally check their Twitter feeds fairly regularly. But then I am kind of an old-fashioned guy, and so when it comes to mainstream communication, then email is the way. It's very 1980s, I know, but it's the way I was brought up.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe because we message each other through Twitter. That's the way. But I sometimes think that it's not the same as, it doesn't have the same sort of thread history as Twitter doesn't have the same sort of thread history as email is. I think sometimes things get lost. It's not so easy to see the conversations that we'd had previously. Do you find that?
Yeah, that's true. Email isn't particularly good at that. And I do like the sort of the threading scheme of it. On the other hand, email is slightly more versatile in that it's much easier to attach stuff, to send additional documents and that sort of thing. And it's a base spec service. I mean, help. I still use SMS, which makes me seem like a dinosaur these days, but it's a perfectly good system. It's as long as you can get your message into 140 characters, then Bob's your uncle.
Exactly. And we've heard a lot about Messenger. There's going to be bots. They're going to be working with corporations. But in this whole press release that they released today, Messenger Chief David Marcus said they're not under any pressure to monetize it at the moment, which makes sense. I mean, they're Facebook. They have they have so many other avenues for monetization. But I do think businesses and bots are on the way. And even though they're not under any pressure, I think the bottom line is always there. So I think monetization to Messenger is on the way. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. And in fact, they are monetizing it just indirectly. I mean, there's tremendous, the reason why Facebook split this off, Microsoft, they're another pushy software vendor. The reason why this was split off was because it gives them direct control over the messaging function. It ties people more closely into the platform. It gives them another thing to sell to advertisers. So they're monetizing it indirectly. I mean, whether or not they're going to start showing ads in there at some later point when they decide they need more money, then possibly so. I noticed in that statement, it was just like not doing it yet. And you're like, yeah, okay, that doesn't exactly fill me with reassurance. It's kind of like if you ask a partner if they're faithful and you say, oh, yes, at the moment, it's just like, that's not a reassuring answer.
Exactly. Well, Apple released a handful of updates this week with patches for a number of holes, including the vulnerability to a man-in-the-middle flaw discovered in FaceTime by researcher Martin Vigo. Sean Nichols, your colleague over at the Register, says there were also updates to holes in Safari, iTunes, and iOS. So I guess all Apple products are completely without holes and totally safe and private now.
Well, if wishing made it so, yes. I mean, there's always going to be holes out there. It's impossible to write anything more than the most basic piece of software without there being flaws in it somewhere that can be exploited. And we'll see at the Black Hat and DEF CON demo conferences next month that's quite how good these people have got. Now, Sean did a very good rundown on this, and there are a lot of holes. The FaceTime man-in-the-middle attack in particular is something which could scare some people rigid considering what goes on that particular platform. But, I mean, a lot of holes there. Apple, I have to say, is getting better at this sort of thing. They did them slightly more regularly. But yes, it's as it wills, these just arrived out of the blue. And yes, if you are running an Apple system, get patching, because now that these patches and the flaws that they fix are out there, then malware writers are going to be exploiting them an awful lot more.
Mm-hmm. Well, a few weeks ago, we talked to a reporter covering the current problems with Airbnb hosts refusing to rent to African Americans. Today, the company announced that they plan to get some serious help with the problem from none other than former Attorney General Eric Holder. In a blog post today, Airbnb announced that in addition to a review led by Laura Murphy, who's the former head of the ACLU Washington, D.C. Legislative Office, Eric Holder will join the Airbnb team to help craft an anti-discrimination policy. So they are pretty serious, it sounds like. They already have a policy in place, but this one will be stronger, which it needs to be. When we talked a couple weeks ago about this, we talked about a new startup called Inclusive. I don't know if you've heard about it, Iain, but it was a guy who started this because basically the problem that people were finding, and they did research, I mean, they did Harvard research to find that if you had an African-American sounding name, it was harder to rent a place on Airbnb. You would try to rent it, and the owner would just say, oh, it's not available at that time. And then these people would find someone else with a not African-American sounding name, and they would say, oh, yes, suddenly it's available to you. So what this person at Inclusive was trying to do was set up a system that if you were an owner of a house, you would, and you said no, then you wouldn't be able to let anyone else rent it, which makes sense to me. But I guess they're looking for something better than that.
Yeah, no, I like the inclusive idea a lot because, I mean, there is a certain amount of racism in any society, but the studies that were being done were really quite shocking. And the people involved were quite shameless about it as well, which you can't help feeling is very wrong. So I was a big fan of the inclusive system. Now, when it comes to Airbnb, well, Eric Holder is a very good name to have. He's sort of known for being particularly tough in a lot of areas and quite fair-minded. But he's there to draw up a policy. The question is, how well will Airbnb actually enforce it? Because they don't want to annoy too many people who are letting houses, because that's at the end of the day the stock that makes them money. So whether or not they actually lose more landlords or gain more tenants, if they do it right, they could gain a lot of tenants, because this is obviously a problem. It needs to be fixed, and just ignoring it and hoping it'll go away isn't really an option. So I say fair play to them. I think Holder is a very good choice, but you can come up with all the fancy words that you like, but if you don't enforce them, then it's pretty much a PR exercise.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And I think they also announced a round of funding today or something. This was definitely, I mean, hopefully it has, that this will really happen and they will find a solution. But yes, it does definitely have a PR aspect in it too. But if you want to share your ideas, they in the press release, they have an email, allbelong@airbnb.com. ALLBELONG at Airbnb.com. If you have some ideas, they are accepting them via email.
Keep it clean, please.
There's also some SpaceX Dragon cargo news. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, first off, this morning, the Dragon capsule that was launched on Monday docked with the ISS, and they're currently unpacking the food, underwear, clothes, equipment, scientific experiments, and a new docking adapter, which is built into the base of the cargo pod. We've also heard that SpaceX has applied for planning permission in Florida to build an additional 2 rocket landing pads. Now, this is going to be very important when its new rocket, the Falcon Heavy, flies hopefully later this year. It's 2 years late at the moment, but as Elon put it himself, it's a heavy pucker factor operation, because basically you're taking a modified existing Falcon 9, strapping 2 other Falcon 9s to the side of it, and then firing all of them off at the same time. So you're talking 27 rocket motors going off at the same time. And then once it reaches a certain altitude, the 2 side boosters will break apart, turn around, come back to land, and land simultaneously. And then after it's delivered its payload, the 3rd rocket will also come down at land. Now, they have a landing strip there at the moment. They landed there successfully twice now, the second time on Monday. And now they want to build an additional 2 so that they can get all the Falcon Heavy rockets down on time in the right place. So exciting times ahead, slightly noisy times ahead also for local residents, because these things do cause a sonic boom when they come down, as residents found out on Monday, and quite a few called 911 to complain about the noise and find out what was going on. So it's possible that what we call NIMBYs, the Not In My Backyard crew, could have some kind of negative effect on this. But I think the benefits of having a spaceport there will outweigh a few people who occasionally have to put up with a sonic boom. Personally, I would love to live around there. To get to see launches that often would be fantastic. Although, as SpaceX themselves have said, our goal is to make this so commonplace that it becomes ordinary and quite boring, which is an interesting way to look at rocket launches.
Well, I mean, that's sort of what became NASA, right? I mean, that it wasn't boring if you were actually watching it, but I mean, the American people got a little less interested in the space shuttle as time went on. But then that's sort of go ahead.
When the first space shuttle launched, it was a huge event. I can remember watching it on TV, and in fact, Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft, and a couple of Microsofties booked tickets to go down and see the launch because piece of history and all that, and why not? And Bill Gates had an absolute furious screaming row with him because they were close to deadline. He didn't think it was a suitable thing to do. And Alan just said, "Look, it's the first time this thing is ever going to fly. We're going to go and see it," and they did it. But it did give a temporary cooling of that particular relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing to watch. We were just watching the video. Just to watch a rocket just land in one piece is still amazing, and hopefully will continue to be amazing.
I know it's one of those things. It's just they talked about it for so long. Yeah, it'll never happen, never happen. Then when it happens, it boggles the mind. You've got over 100 foot of rocket coming down after going hypersonic, then slowing itself down, coming back to land, and landing perfectly. I mean, I don't know if you saw the video on Monday, but it was spot on. No hesitation at all, just straight down, poof. And it was a thing of beauty to see.
Yeah, it was. Well, speaking of space shuttle time, according to a piece in Mental Floss, Japan will be making its last ever VCR this month. Funai Electric is the last remaining Japanese company to make VCRs, and they're shutting down due to a declining market, shockingly, and an inability to acquire parts. Do you have any last words for this machine of our youth? Yeah.
I mean, it was, the VCR was, well, okay. First off, the VCR served a very, very important use because it firmly established my father as being not the person to follow in tech. He went Betamax, he went 8-track, and now it's just like when we had the whole Blu-ray the high def DVD thing. I asked him which one he was interested in buying, and he went for HD DVD, and it was like, right, okay, Blu-ray's going to win that one. But the video the video recorder, when it came into people's homes, was a revelation. I mean, up until that point, when you think about it, we really didn't have any control over what we watched. It was all down to what was pumped out of the TV screen at us. With this, you could set up the video, you could record what you want. You didn't have to be around the TV at a specific time of the week just to watch your program. And then you could keep it as well and watch it again and again and again. Now, it had some downsides. I mean, it led to enormous amounts of piracy. But at the same time, you could argue that piracy actually inspires some markets as well as takes away from them. It caused a massive kerfuffle with the courts over here, with media owners trying to get it banned or trying to get a tax put on on blank video cassettes to make up for the loss of earnings that they might incur. We got a very important Supreme Court ruling on that, which established fair use standards, which lasted for quite some time. So the VCR was an incredibly important bit of kit, and they are still being made in China, just not in Japan. But I have to say, I haven't owned one for a number of years now, and I do still have one in storage back in the UK, but I should imagine it's fairly dusty and done over at the moment. But at the end of the day, it's an analog tech, so it was going to go out of fashion. And now it's all digital, and we still use video. I mean, video is still used in a lot of ways because it's a very cheap method of storage. CCTV camera systems love it, for example. But it is a bit of a sad day that Japan, the country that pioneered this technology, has now finally shut down its last factory.
Well, the Mental Floss piece talks about how some people see this as the vinyl, the VCRs, I guess the VHS tapes are like the vinyl of analog video recording, which it's not exactly, because it's good comparison, I don't think. I mean, vinyl, I'm not a sound expert, but sounds better. There's nothing that looks better about watching something on a VHS tape necessarily.
Oh, no, and in fact, in some cases, it's kind of worse. I can remember as a teenager hiring Basic Instinct from the video shop, and the scene where Sharon Stone crosses her legs, the whole screen sort of went a bit fuzzy because you knew that all the people before that had been pausing, rewind, stopping, pausing, rewinding, and it made the picture quality terrible. So VCR technology, it wasn't great, but for what it did, it was really, really good. I mean, it was the kind of equivalent of, I'm a bit older than you, but I mean, used to tape music from the radio stations by sitting there on a cassette player and then pressing record and hoping the DJ didn't talk over the beginning of the song. VCR was like that for TV, and it opened up a whole new medium of storage, set up massive industries, which, sort of boomed, and then like Blockbuster went spectacularly bust after they were led by donkeys. And turned down the Blockbuster. Well, no, they turned down the opportunity to buy Netflix for $50 million. I mean, in terms of, really stupid business decisions, that's very high up on the list.
Exactly,
But yeah, I mean, I do more on occasionally you still see video shops around, and now it's kind of like, oh, isn't that quaint? But it made a lot of difference to a lot of people's lives.
It did, yeah. And the last time we talked about, I think we were talking about video shops, we mentioned the phrase "be kind, rewind." And Chris, who was running our prompter then and is running it now, he just graduated from high school. It was like 5 minutes after we were done, he said, I just got what that meant. Like, he had never, it's just so funny that anyone who's 18 years old would just not even really understand what "be kind, rewind" means. But yeah.
Indeed, so. There's a meme going around that says if you know the connection between these two items, then you're of a certain age, and it was a cassette tape and a pencil. And it's like, if you didn't get what that was about, then you had to be there, really.
Well, after the break, Selena Larson is here to talk about the ways that people are using the iPhone and the Apple Watch to manage mental health. But first, let's take a minute to thank Trunk Club, the sponsor of this episode. Summer is here. It's time to spruce up your wardrobe with summer essentials like short sleeve button-downs, lightweight blazers, and swimwear. Whether you're looking for beach formal attire or grown-up graphic tees, Trunk Club is a shopping game changer for men and women. With Trunk Club, you'll never have to step foot inside a store for your clothing needs again. Plus, you get your very own personal stylist for free. My personal stylist recommended the scarf that I'm wearing on the show today. I love it. I wear it all the time, which you probably know if you watch the show every day. If you don't watch the show every day, why not? Just type in your measurements and share your style and your spending preferences to connect with the right Trunk Club stylist. He or she will contact you via phone, email, or messenger to understand your unique look and learn more about what you're looking for. Your stylist will select items from your trunk from over 80 top brands and will send a preview of clothes that may be a good fit. Review your trunk via email and make edits before it's shipped right to your door. You'll have 10 days to try on the clothes, keep what you like, and send back the rest. Trunk Club is not a subscription service, and shipping is always free both ways. ways. Premium clothes, expert advice, no work, thanks to your very own personal stylist at Trunk Club. Trunk Club is backed by Nordstrom, which means they have the highest standards in quality and customer service. And if you live in Dallas, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, or D.C., you can stop by one of the Trunk Club clubhouses to work with your stylist in person for free. Make a statement at the next big event on your calendar with a look that's hand-picked just for you and your style. Get started today at trunkclub.com/TNT. Look and feel your best with clothes that fit you perfectly. That's trunkclub.com/TNT, and we thank Trunk Club for their support. Earlier this week, I spoke to Georgia Dow from Iain, who is also a psychotherapist focusing on anxiety. She says in her practice, she's yet to find the killer app for patients recording their moods. But according to Selena Larson from the Daily Dot, that might be changing soon. Welcome, Selena.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So some people might not understand the difference between Apple's year-old research kit and the new Care Kit. But for those who don't understand, can you give us a little explainer about those two?
Yeah, definitely. So Research Kit is a framework for scientists and researchers to be able to build apps that connect with patients, and they can directly pull data for use in academic studies. Care Kit is more of a framework for patients, basically that it makes it really easy with these certain modules to implement into apps for tracking your care, sharing how you're feeling with your caregivers or your friends and family. So essentially, the Research Kit is more towards researching, and Care Kit is designed for patients and clinicians. So the focus of this particular story is around Research Kit, which is the more scientific-based framework that Apple debuted last year.
And so tell us about the mood challenge. That's the thing that you wrote about. What is that?
Yeah, so it's a program that's essentially reaching out to, or has worked with a lot of different groups who have submitted proposals for apps and services that harness Research Kit, and as well as other facets of the iPhone and Apple Watch. So that could be the gyroscope or the GPS, things like that, to build apps on top of that can track people's moods, from whether that be psychiatric disorders to just general mood throughout the day. And they just announced the semifinalists. There were 5 semifinalists who have been chosen to kind of pursue and further their research. And I talked to a couple of them for this particular story. One was focusing on post-traumatic stress disorder in a partnership with the VA. That would be a WARE study. And then BioEffect is a really interesting application that is tracking mood disorder in bipolar disorder.
So how can the accelerometer and the gyroscope, how can you use that to test for mental health issues?
Yeah, so those two things are a lot have to do with movement. For instance, AWARE study, which is the PTSD research that a group with the VA is doing, they track things like whether a person is leaving their home, which is one of the signs of avoidance. If somebody isn't leaving their home, or they're not chatting with friends, or they're kind of, withdrawing from the world, they can use the mobile devices and things like GPS tracking, movement tracking to determine their behavior, along with, of course, self-reporting feelings. For instance, one of the facets of the application that they're building is you can select an image that best describes how you're feeling, whether that's, a smiling baby or, a sad kitten, kind of, using image association to share your feelings. And what's great and what's really unique about this particular study, especially for the VA, is that they have not been able to collect data from their suite of apps that already exist for people with post-traumatic stress disorder and post-traumatic stress issues. So they are going to be able to use the data collected from participants in this study, which is all voluntary, of course, to be able to find out how people want to use apps, how they're engaging with their phones, and what kind of behavior they can track to potentially predict episodes of high stress situations. So they're going to take some of these learnings from the research and apply it to the apps that currently exist, and that's one of the semifinalists in the Mood Challenge.
So you talk about. Go ahead, Iain.
Well, I was just thinking, how does this deal with false positives? Because, when you're talking about something as nebulous as moods, then getting an app which actually does that it seems very, very tricky. I'm presuming there's going to be a lot more research to work out the efficacy of this software before it's actually rolled out to live patients.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, for instance, in the other study that's focusing on bipolar disorder, it's called BioEffect. They are actually still doing psychiatric visitations with clinicians and doctors. So this app uses a third-party keyboard to track how people are talking and the way that they're transmitting data. For instance, they can tell whether you have deleted words before sending, or if you just are sending this train of thought directly. And so they have this hypothesis that they can be able to predict episodes of bipolar disorder based on your behavior with your phone and the ways that you're communicating. So the folks that are currently participating in an initial study that they're running on Android right now are still seeing clinicians, following up to be able to check in with them and to see if these hypotheses are correct. Ultimately, what everyone is hoping is that these apps will be able to scale to larger audiences and sort of have this predictive nature to it. And as well as the PTSD app, the AWARE study, that is just obviously going to be run on a trial, and it's like a small group of people. It's not going to be an app that rolls out to a larger group. It's going to be taking facets of this research and applying it to apps that currently exist, and kind of determining what best helps patients.
So what you're saying is it's not going to determine if someone has bipolar disorder, but with bipolar disorder, the issue is when are you going to have a manic episode? And so this would say, okay, and the patient as well as their family would like to know that, and sometimes that's when the harm happens, when you don't know that it's happening. So you'd be able to tell it by their typing, their accelerometer, things in the gyroscope in their phone. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So obviously, none of this is used for diagnosis purposes whatsoever. All of it is patients who are already currently seeing clinicians or seeing folks for these kinds of disorders, and it's more kind of having a greater understanding of how we can actually use mobile technology to better understand our mental wellness. Because currently there are so many things on the market, right? We have wearables for fitness. You use your phone for step tracking and calorie counting and all of these sort of physical attributes that we can track with our smartphones. And there is it's like still very nascent. There's some wearables that are kind of targeting this like mental health and wellness area. But with ResearchKit, it's more focusing on these more like clinical efforts. So to be able to understand our mental health and well-being and be able to use what's on our phone to take care of our mental wellness the same way that we take care of our physical wellness. So it's pretty interesting. And there haven't been that many studies done with ResearchKit. It's still fairly new. And one of the studies that was recently released, they actually released some of their data. It's an app called Empower. And it does research into Parkinson's disease. So similar, using the facets that come on your phone automatically, a lot of these sensors that are built right into the phone, they analyze daily changes and symptoms of folks that have Parkinson's disease. And so they've compiled this anonymized data and are releasing it to the public in this open source format to be able to say, this is a study that we're running. These are some of the things that we're investigating, and these are our results. And what I think is really interesting is the ResearchKit by nature is open source, and all of the study participants in the Mood Challenge, all of their proposals are required to be open source as well. So you have these really forward-thinking researchers that are building apps and services on top of Apple's products that are going to be able to open source this technology and some of their research to say, this is how we built it, this is how we did it. And eventually, ultimately, when the studies are concluded, the anonymized data from people who have volunteered or who have elected to participate in these studies is going to be available for clinical researchers to better understand PTSD and bipolar disorder.
So in the past, you've written some great pieces about activity trackers and fitness trackers that often do more harm to your health, sometimes to your mental health, than they do good, just because you're constantly tracking everything and it can cause anxiety and just an over concern. Did any of that come out in any of the research you did for this story? For these?
So Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Yes, I do write about that a lot, as well as my own personal experiences with it, as I think I've probably talked about on your show. But what's interesting is right now, essentially, all of these things are just going to be a proxy for paper tracking that already exists. So if you are currently in therapy for something like post-traumatic stress disorder, you're already working with a clinician to track your behavior, to write down how you're feeling and your thoughts, and you're already engaging on that level with a clinician. And similar with bipolar disorder, if you are taking a test to first of all to diagnose whether or not you have it, again, that's something that they had talked about offering within the app, as but you're already tracking these symptoms. So it's basically just taking this analog data that you're collecting and making it a little bit more passive and less emphasis on the user to consistently be like, oh, this is how I'm feeling, or this is what I'm doing. But you have these with the keyboard app, it's just automatically running in the background, so you don't have to think about it necessarily. It's all of this data is being passively collected, and it's very similar to what you would be giving to your doctor or your therapist anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea. I mean, I've tried mood apps before. I tried one like months ago, and it's still on my Apple Watch, and it still comes up like, how are you feeling right now? And I can't do anything. Like, I can't say how I'm feeling on there. So it's just provoking anxiety.
I'm really irritated at this bloody app.
That's basically like, I wish I had the time to just turn off that notification. I know I can, but I move on to the next thing.
Yeah. I actually use I use this app called Chill. It has like these really like Zen quotes that it will send you, and then it just like sends you reminders like to breathe and to relax your shoulders and to just, have you thought about your body today? It's just like, no, I haven't, but thank you. I'm going to for like 5 seconds. Thanks for this reminder.
I'm a big believer in ditching the apps on this. I have a really good physical system for lifting my mood. It's called the Pub, and it works every time.
Well, good. If we can get that on your Apple Watch that you don't have, then maybe we well, Chill. I gotta write that one down. Selena, thank you so much. And the Pub, I've already got. I know where that is. Thank you so much for joining us. Selena is a reporter at the Daily Dot, and Selena Larson on Twitter. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Take care.
Yes,
Bye.
TNT's fan of the day is Trenton Moody, who wrote in about the new feature in Snapchat that lets you save your snaps so you can continue to be a digital hoarder, even on Snapchat. Trenton writes, the new memories feature does away with ephemerality. Ephemerality, it's a tough word. In some ways, this is proof to us, along with the addition of Bitmoji, that the old people are mucking things up. If you want to disable memories and revert back to the easy save to camera roll method, here is how. He had to show me because I'm an old person. Swipe down, go to settings, memory, save to, and camera roll. And Trenton sent us this little GIF too to show you how to do it. So, Iain, are you on Snapchat?
I'm not. No, I don't send nude photos of myself, so I've never felt the need to get on it. And it's just another messaging platform at the end of the day. So, but yes, certain photos of me have never been taken and will never be in my dead body. So.
Well, I mean, now that they have the memories feature, you wouldn't want to send them anyway because they can, you would want to follow Trenton's rules and turn it off if you changed your mind and decided to start.
Yeah, it's weird how this has evolved because when Snapchat first, I mean, the whole point of Snapchat initially was that it destroyed your images, and that you did have this feature to kill off these things, and now they're moving into more to keeping them, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out if it actually goes to IPO or whether it gets snapped up by somebody else, because at the moment it's looking more and more like just another messaging platform.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely think there's something different and the buy-in from younger people, I think, it appears to be different, in my opinion. And as in terms of, it's starting as sending nude photos. I mean, we were talking about the VCR before that, VHS tapes started with pornography. That's where cable started. That's where so much technology starts. So it's not really a surprise to me that that's where they started, and then they've evolved into this more monetizable product.
I mean, it's definitely, with the youth, as it were, it's tremendously popular. And somebody actually said to me, so, "Oh, can I snap you?" And it was just like, well, I'm quite flexible, but it should be some, it's when it's entered the lexicon. This is a big deal, and certainly with the all importance, with youthful users, then it is a very common platform, and one that appears to be loved. I wonder how quickly fashions will change on this. I mean, a lot of people still using WhatsApp, particularly if they're overseas. Maybe another messaging app will come out, which is good enough to actually, supplant Snapchat. But it does have a useful install base and seems to be tootling along. But yes, with the reader's messages, like old people have been mucking this up. I'm just like, oh no. I mean, seriously, we're not that bad, Don't just sit there going, "Oh, get off my lawn! I know your dad,"
Well, Trenton emails us a lot, and I think that was a little tongue in cheek. He was just joking a little bit.
Ah, good. Okay. I'd hate to have to go over and whine at him about how things were better in my day when people showed respect for their elders.
I won't give you his email address then.
Aha, right. Okay. Just don't give him my physical address, otherwise I could get beaten up on this one.
Well, after the break, we'll talk about one of the old companies, Microsoft. We'll talk about earnings and what they really mean. But first, let's take a minute to thank ZipRecruiter, the sponsor of this episode. Are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates fast? Posting jobs in one place is not enough to find quality candidates. If you want to find the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all the top job sites. And with ZipRecruiter, now you can. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to more than 100 job boards, including social media networks like Facebook and Twitter, all with a single click. Just post once and watch your candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. You can search by skills, location, work experience, and more. ZipRecruiter's advanced matching technology delivers the most relevant candidates based on your criteria. ZipRecruiter offers optimized pages that look great on any screen. Add their unique mobile apply process for more visitors and more applicants. Find candidates in any city or industry nationwide. No more juggling emails or calls to your office. You can add multiple users to your account. You can find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 800,000 businesses and is trusted by hundreds of Fortune 500 companies. More than 125 million candidate applications have been delivered. So whether you're hiring now or you plan to hire in the near future, check out their blog for recruiting tips and hiring resources. Right now, you can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. Access millions of resumes on ZipRecruiter with thousands of new ones added every single day. ZipRecruiter is the fastest way to hire great people. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT, and we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today. So yesterday we talked briefly about how Microsoft had beat the street and had the cloud to thank for it. Let's delve a little more into the details. What do yesterday's earnings really mean, Iain?
Well, it's two things, really. Well, two and a half if you include my little rant at the end. But, I mean, first off, Microsoft is now well into its transition into cloud. It's got the bulk of the like any big software company who made their living out of box software, they had to transfer to the cloud. They seem to have done that and absorbed most of the costs of doing that. They're still profitable. Their revenues haven't cratered. They're down a bit, but they're not bad. And as I say, they're still turning in very healthy billion-dollar profits for the billions of dollars of profits for the quarter. So that's the good news. In particular, Azure did very well. Chris Williams, our resident financial expert, went through the figures, and he worked out that Azure is probably generated about $800 million this quarter for Microsoft in terms of operating revenues, which sounds great, and it is pretty good. But then at the same time, they lost $870 million on their phone business, declining 71%. And basically, Windows Mobile is now circling the drain faster and faster. And I think if you include the cost of the acquisition of Nokia, the cost of keeping the whole things running, and the cost of lost revenues, it's turning out to be one of the pricier mistakes that Microsoft ever made. It was a phenomenally botched acquisition, and Stephen Elop has not exactly covered himself with glory. And I gather he's persona non grata in Finland at the moment, but when you destroy one of the country's major resources, then that's kind of expected. So yeah, bad news on phone, good news on cloud. The interesting thing that I found really quite disturbing was hidden away in the statement where they reported that Microsoft's effective tax rate for the last quarter was 7%. Now, Microsoft and many other tech firms are always whining about the fact that America doesn't produce enough STEM graduates, children aren't being educated properly. Well, maybe if they paid their bloody taxes, we could afford to hire teachers and pay them properly so that we could get these skills into kids. But no, 7%. I mean, as someone who's been dealing with your IRS and they're a lovely bunch of people, won't hear a word said against them, but they are scary in their ways and they do charge an arm and a leg. If I could get away with 7%, I'd be a very happy man indeed. And I think Microsoft needs, and other tech companies, need to start paying their way before sort of whining about the environment in which they're working.
Well, the French regulators are also not pleased with Microsoft. You say they issued a formal warning claiming that Windows 10 collects too much personal data, ships that information illegally out of the EU, and its security stinks. What can you tell us about this?
Yes. The cheese-eating surrender monkeys did have a bit of a hissy fit over this one. To be honest, I mean, they raised some interesting points. I think they're wrong on at least one of them. Basically, their argument is that all Microsoft operating systems back to probably Windows 95 have sent some data back to Microsoft headquarters. But Windows 10 is really a step above, it's way up there in terms of the amount of data that it puts out, that it collects in and sends back. Now, the French regulators' argument is that, all this data sending is switched on by default, and Microsoft gives very little information about how to turn it off. And as someone who recently upgraded to Windows 10 on one of my machines, you then got to spend a good hour going through, clicking all the little boxes to make sure you've got the data flow that's going back is exactly the way you want it. As it turns out, I then took Windows 10 off the machine because it balked Skype, as we memorably found out at just the wrong moment. But the other argument they put forward is that as a security side of things, because if you register for the store and you want to get apps in, then one of the methods to do so is a 4-digit PIN code. And for some reasons beyond understanding, Microsoft engineers decided not to put in a very simple bit of code, which means if you put in a certain number of PIN codes and they're all wrong, then the system locks up. Now, that's really security 101, and I'm surprised it's not in there. But on the other hand, there are plenty of other ways to lock down your application, going all the way up to two-factor authentication and beyond. So it's a bit of a mixed bag on that. The French are very conscious of their privacy. The regulatory body has also taken Facebook and Google to task on this. And on the safe harbor provisions, yes, Microsoft did ship data back after safe harbor had expired and before Privacy Shield came in. But we've just got a statement from Microsoft saying, while that's true, even though safe harbor had been struck down by the courts, we still stuck to the same rules in handling our data, and we're very active in getting Privacy Shield up and running. So I'm inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. But it just goes to highlight how differently America and Europe deal with these matters of privacy, because this never came up with US regulators. It wouldn't even have been considered. And if somebody did complain about it, I suspect they'd be told they'd be given very short shrift. Whereas in Europe, and particularly in France and also in Germany and some of the Nordics, privacy is much, much more important. And it's seen as possibly the most important issue to some people who are both users and regulators. So, I mean, it's a very interesting dichotomy as to how the two areas deal with this incredibly important privacy issue that needs to be sorted out. And Microsoft is going to work with the French team. They're going to, try and do their best to make this go away. And I think it'll probably work. But from what the initial complaint that was made today, it's very, very broad. And I can't see Microsoft basically retooling its entire operating system for a French version of it. They'd had to do that with the European Union versions of Windows, so you could pick your browser rather than just being given Internet Explorer. But this is a much more complex issue, and you can't really expect Microsoft to build a new operating system just for French users.
Yeah, I mean, I think Microsoft really does care about privacy, whether it's ultimately for the bottom line or corporate policy. I mean, we haven't talked about last week. There was the warrant case of the data that was held in an Irish case. That, I mean, Microsoft fought for that, and they won that case.
Yeah, I mean, they actually asked a court to hold them in contempt so they could go to court over it, which was a very interesting legal strategy, but it has paid off for them. And yes, in cases like the Dublin case, they have really fought hard on that one for very good reasons, because they know that their cloud business outside of the US is dead if they don't. And a certain amount of business inside the US would go away from them if they just rolled over and played, Please Rub My Belly, Mr. Federal Officer. So, I mean, in cases like that, they are very good. That said, Windows 10 is really, really grabby with your data. Unless unless you turn it off, they will try and stick adverts into your start menu. They grab an enormous amount of data, and they're going to monetize it in some way. Now, a lot of users don't like that. An awful lot of our readers don't like that. And they particularly also didn't like Windows' nagware tactics of trying to get Windows 10 onto our computers. So, I mean, Windows 10 is very grabby. The regulators, I think, were perfectly within their rights to raise these issues. I think they got it wrong in a couple of cases. But, compared to someone like Facebook or Google, then Microsoft isn't the worst offender on this. But Windows 10 as an operating system, it's getting users into the mindset where they're willing to accept that amount of data, of their data, going out to another company's servers. Now, they've done it on social media. Google has done it to an extent with email. When you're talking about the entire operating system, people get nervous. And I think they've got a right to be nervous. I don't think Microsoft is the great evil mustache-twizzling sort of bad guy that some people assume. But the data-grabby aspects of Windows 10, it certainly turned me off the operating system.
Well, after the break, I use Google Sheets to create the outline for this show every day, but I had no idea that it could also be used for street art. I'll explain what I mean after the break, but first let's take a minute to thank Igloo, the sponsor of this episode. Work is no longer a location. Teams can be together half a world away. Igloo is a modern intranet designed to keep everyone on the same page. You can share files, have real conversations in real time, and do it all while still being able to use the apps you currently use, like Box, Google Drive, and Skype. Igloo creates a single destination that lets you focus on your work. It's a cloud platform that helps you share files, collaborate on documents, blog updates, coordinate calendars, and manage projects. Anyone can add content based on their permissions with a drag-and-drop widget and WYSIWYG editor. Igloo also offers a variety of access, authentication, and identity services to ensure that only authorized users have access in private clouds, over SSL, and with 256-bit encryption. Unlike other solutions, you can customize Igloo to fit your needs and work with your current IT investments like Office 365, Salesforce, SharePoint, Active Directory, file sharing solutions like Google Drive, and Box, and support systems. Put simply, Igloo is an intranet you'll actually like. Try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit or sign up for a live demo to see it in action. When you sign up through our link, you get your own Igloo for up to 10 people, absolutely free for as long as you want it. Just go to igloosoftware.com/TWIT. Google challenged the website Refinery29 to create street art using Google Sheets, and they did. Artists Marina Esmeraldo of Barcelona and Mallory Heyer of New York used Google's spreadsheet tool to create art using data cells filled with color. Their final creation was 13 by 34. It was a mural that a company called Colossal Media in Brooklyn turned into a giant street art, which you can see if you're watching our audio, you can see, or if you're watching the video version, you can see as they're painting it, and we'll show you the final version. This is really cool, and I hate Google Sheets. What do you think, Ian?
For someone who uses it so much, that's kind of unfortunate, to be honest, but it is very much the red-headed stepchild of spreadsheet functions. Honestly, I saw this and I was sorely impressed. I mean, this is a really creative use of technology in a way that you wouldn't have thought possible. It kind of reminded me of, have you ever seen the Post-it notes sort of sculptures that people put on windows of office blocks these days, with different color Post-it notes being made into sort of various characters and the rest of it. It's quite popular down at Google Campus for some reason.
I haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, no, it's quite fun. But I thought this was a brilliant idea. I mean, it's one of those great examples of people using the technology in a way that it was never even supposed to be used for. And that's been something that has always been the case. I think it was William Gibson, the neuromancer author, who summed it up, and the street finds its own use for technology. But this, I mean, I was really impressed with the art. It looks good. It's a very innovative way to use the technology, and more power to them, so I say. Yes,
exactly. I don't know that I like Google Sheets anymore than I did before I saw this art, and I have no idea why. It's just the thing that we use. So yeah, it's like Facebook Messenger and Google Sheets. Someone told me I had to use it, and so I do.
Yeah. It was interesting actually. Satya Nadella said that at the Microsoft earnings call yesterday. He said we want to move people from needing to use Windows, to wanting to use Windows, to loving Windows. And I think possibly number 3 is a bit of a long jump because I've never, ever met anybody who loves Windows. It's just not one of those things that's particularly lovable. As you know, you couldn't imagine sort of people. I guess there are Windows enthusiasts. When Windows 95 launched, people were queuing up outside shops at midnight to get the first copy, and then went home and tried to load it onto the computers and found there were no drivers for it, and then sobbed quietly onto their keyboards. But I mean, it's, you know, there's very few technologies that people love, and it's a lot of it is stuff that we have to use, and we use because, you know, it's what the job demands. But in the case of the Sheets thing, I mean, fair play to them. That was a really inventive idea.
I agree. Well, it's officially 5:35 Pacific
I know,
time,
nothing on the feed yet.
Yeah, as Kevin King, our editor, said, we must wait. Get it?
Yeah. Oh. Okay. In the great punning categories. Next time I pop up there, I need to have a word with Kevin.
Nothing on the blog. It's funny because he said post should go live on the Tesla website around 5 p.m. and then his next tweet was just California time. So maybe he means California time as we're all laid back. That could be 7. That could be 8.
5-ish. You know, did I say today? I meant tomorrow. I mean, the problem is Elon is renowned for this. Just like saying, well, so we're going to do this by this, and it never works out because life doesn't work like that.
Exactly. I guess it's a way to, incentivize his employees through the, fear of making him look bad, but it didn't appear to work.
Well, yeah, but I mean, also he's been promoting this on his Twitter feed for the last week, and he actually pulling an all-nighter to try and get the plan together. Now, this is the plan which is going to guide Tesla for the next 10 years. I'd rather he spent a little more time just getting it right rather than, sitting up there with a huge mug of coffee and a cigar trying to keep himself awake and then, I'll just write that. That looks good. I'm desperate for some sleep now. It's like I'd like a well thought out plan. So I'm willing to wait, but I have to admit getting a little bit impatient now because I was expecting this at 5 and I wanted to have a good dig through at it before I lose internet access later in the evening.
Well, I guess, you'll maybe have to wait till you get back from the mountains.
Indeed. It's going to be very very interesting. 4 or 5 days up in the mountains, no internet, no electricity, and very little heating. And by the way, if any burglars are watching this, I should add that we have a house sitter and our cat is vicious and will claw you without mercy if you try and get in. Or maybe ask for head rubs, but it depends on what kind of mood she's in, to be honest.
Well, Iain, it's always a pleasure. Iain is a reporter at the Register. He is at Iain Thomson on Twitter. Will be off Twitter for a few days. Don't worry. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, great fun as always. Always look forward to it, Megan. Have a great night.
All right. Have a great vacation. Tomorrow's guest will be Owen J.J. Stone, and TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv or leave us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW or send us a voice memo. Just email it to, you can email it directly to me at megan@twit.tv. You can also find us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV and subscribe to the show. Find all the ways at twit.tv/TNT. And I am on Twitter at Megan Morrone. Thanks to our technical director, Kara. Thanks to Chris for running the prompter. And thanks to Kevin for editing and for giving us the best pun of the show. And thanks to everyone else who helps us produce the show. And thanks to you for hanging in there. We'll see you tomorrow.